My name is Severin Varga. I'm 74 years old, and I spent more than 4 decades building structures meant to survive anything. I never imagined the first thing to collapse would be my own family. I thought I was waking up from a routine procedure. Then I found a medical report I had never agreed to. My name was on it. My doctor's signature was on it. And according to those pages, my mind was already gone. But that was only the first lie, because someone in my own family had been building a case against me for months, quietly, carefully. And by the time I understood why, they were already preparing to take everything.
My name is Severin Varga. I'm 74 years old, and on the night I woke up from heart surgery, I heard my own doctor plan my death in a whisper, 3 feet from my bed. "He's deep under," the nurse said. "Good," Dr. Lucia Hallberg answered. 20 years of friendship in that voice, and not 1 ounce of it real. Put this grey envelope in the folder for his wife, not the lawyer's. Her. Paper rustled. A drawer clicked shut. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't gasp. I didn't move 1 single muscle. Because I had already been conscious for 4 minutes, and I remember every second of it. The monitor beside me betrayed me first. Beep, 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 quickening before I could stop it. "Is he waking up?" the nurse asked, alarm sharpening her voice. "Post-op surge," Lucian said. "Cold, clinical, bored almost. Add 5 milligrams. We can't have him lucid yet, not until the paperwork is discovered by the right hands." I felt the sedative hit my vein like ice water dropped into a furnace. 42 years of building towers had taught me exactly one thing that mattered right then: how to hold weight without buckling. I anchored my mind to a blueprint, bolt patterns, load calculations, a railway station I reinforced in 1994. And I counted rivets in my head until the room stopped spinning. I did not let go. The door hissed shut. Silence. Nothing but the hum of an air filter, and my own heartbeat in my ears. My eyes snapped open. The room was a smear of white and steel. My chest burned where the sensors clung to my skin, but adrenaline is a stronger drug than anything they'd put in that IV bag. On a steel cart to my right sat a folder, Varga S, and sticking out of the side of it, a grey envelope. I had maybe 90 seconds before someone walked back in. Every inch of movement felt like dragging my own body through wet concrete. I tore the pulse monitor off my finger. The machine screamed a flat, panicked drone, and I lunged. My hands, the same hands that once torqued bolts on a 40-story frame, shook as they closed around that envelope. I grabbed a stack of hospital brochures off the chair behind me and stuffed them into the folder in its place. I shoved the real envelope under my gown, against bare skin, cold as a blade against my ribs. The door handle turned. I dropped back onto the pillow, sensor back on my finger, breath slow, eyes shut. "Mr. Varga?" "Oh, the sensor just slipped. You're fine, Severin." I didn't move a muscle until her footsteps faded down the hall. Then I opened the envelope. Diagnosis: advanced progressive dementia. Bold letters, black as a headstone. My name typed at the top. Episodes of disorientation I never had, delusional decision-making, a clear and present danger to the financial stability of his company. At the bottom, Lucien's signature and the seal of the hospital's own ethics board, the board he chaired, and beneath that, the sentence that turned my blood to ice water, a legal recommendation that my wife, Maëlys, be granted immediate total power of attorney over my medical care and my $76.2 million estate. 42 years of marriage, and this was her answer. I didn't cry. I didn't shake with rage. Something colder came over me instead, the kind of cold you need to survive a demolition without getting buried in it. Because that's exactly what this was. Not a mistake. Not a misunderstanding. A liquidation. They weren't just coming for my money. They were coming to erase the man who reinforced half this city's skyline, and replace him with a cautionary tale about an old fool who overstayed his welcome at the table. And then it hit me, all at once, like a wall coming down brick by brick in reverse, the files that went missing from my office last spring, the emails I supposedly forgot to send, emails I never once drafted. The dizziness, every single morning, right after the vitamins Malis insisted I take with my coffee. I had blamed all of it on age, on 74 years finally catching up to me. It wasn't age, it was sabotage, quiet, patient, month after month of it, engineered by the two people I trusted with my entire life. The door opened again. This time, it wasn't the nurse. Malis walked in wrapped in charcoal silk, beautiful and lethal as a blade drawn slow from its sheath. Lucien followed a step behind, wearing his practiced face of concern like a second white coat. "How is he?" she asked, not even glancing at me first. "Stable," Lucien said, patting her hand like she was the one who needed comforting. "The fog will take a while to clear, but don't worry, we have everything we need now. It's all in the folder." She leaned over the bed and pressed a cold, dry kiss to my forehead. "Sleep, Severin," she whispered against my skin. "You've worked so hard for so long. It's time to let go of the wheel. I'll handle everything now." I felt her hand reach for the folder on the cart. I heard the crinkle of the envelope, the one now stuffed with glossy brochures instead of my own death sentence. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She already knew exactly what it was supposed to say. "I'll call the lawyers," she told Lucien. "We start the transition Monday." At the door, I heard Lucien murmur, low enough that he thought I'd never hear it. "It's for the best, Malis. A man like him shouldn't have to watch himself crumble." The door clicked shut behind them. I counted 60 seconds, then I sat up. "You think I'm crumbling?" I said to the empty room, my own voice sounding like a stranger's. "I'm not crumbling. I'm clearing the site for a new construction. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't call the police. I didn't call a single soul who owed me anything. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't touched in 11 years, a man I once threw out of my own office for telling me a truth I refused to hear. He picked up on the second ring, gravel in his voice, like he'd been expecting this call for a decade. "Oscar," I said, "it's Severin. You were right 11 years ago." Silence on the line. "Then about what, exactly?" "The building is compromised," I said, and I meant every word of it. The company, the marriage, the family, all of it. One single structure I'd spent a lifetime believing was load-bearing. But it's not the steel this time. I let that land before I finished it. It's blood. I hung up, and I lay back down in that hospital bed, eyes wide open in the dark, waiting for Monday. And for the two people I loved most in this world to hand me the very evidence that was going to bury them. They thought they'd built my coffin. What they didn't know yet was that was I the one holding the blueprints. Monday came exactly the way I knew it would, slow, gentle, and full of poison. "You're squinting again, Severin," Malis said, hovering at my study door with a porcelain cup in her hand. "The doctor said the light sensitivity would come with the decline. Drink this. It'll settle the tremors." I looked at the woman I had shared a bed with for 42 years, and for the first time in my life, I saw her clearly. Not a wife, a predator wrapped in Chanel, patient enough to poison a man 1 teaspoon at a time and call it love. "Thank you, my dear," I rasped, letting my hand shake just enough to be convincing. She turned to fuss with the curtains. I tipped the tea into the soil of the potted palm behind my chair. I didn't need the tea to feel dizzy. Betrayal does that all on its own. By midnight, the house had gone quiet, and Malis believed she'd finally drugged her husband into a coma of obedience. She was wrong. I sat in the dark of my study and broke into my own private server, the one I built, the one I encrypted, the one I never imagined I'd need protection from my own family. I found it in 11 minutes, a folder, Project Atlas. I want you to understand what those files actually were. Not just theft. Not just fraud, my wife and my best friend had spent months feeding falsified safety data to a firm called Northbridge Renewal Partners, vultures who specialize in buying condemned buildings for pennies. And the building they'd condemned on paper was the Meridian Crown, my tower. 23 years of my life poured into steel and concrete, and they had forged documents claiming I authorized substandard materials to pad my own profit margin. If this became public, my company wouldn't just fall, it would be buried in lawsuits, and Northbridge would buy the corpse for scraps. Malice walks away with $18.7 million. Lucien gets a board seat. And somewhere, in a courtroom or a headline, I become the man who killed people to save money. I sat there in the dark and I whispered, "You're not just stealing my company, you're turning my life's work into a death trap." Then a notification blinked at the bottom of the screen. A backup, synced from Malice's personal cloud. I don't know why I clicked it. Some part of me already knew I wasn't ready. Inside was a scanned PDF, 13 years old, a paternity test. I want you to sit with that for a second, the way I had to. My daughter, Ileana, the girl I taught to ride a bicycle down our driveway, the girl I walked down an aisle, the girl I built an entire company to one day hand over, was not my biological daughter. The test said it with 99.9% certainty, and scrawled in the margin, in Malice's own handwriting, was a single word: Lucien. 32 years. 32 years of loving what I thought was mine, and it was a lie manufactured before she could even walk. But that wasn't the part that broke me. What broke me were the emails, forged, planted, made to look like they came from me, calling my own daughter a genetic liability, a disappointing investment. Malice had spent years poisoning Ileana against a father who never said a word of it, weaponizing a child's deepest fear until she believed I'd already thrown her away. No wonder she'd helped them. She thought she was striking first against a monster. I built that monster's mask myself, without ever knowing it had my face. The study door creaked. I slammed the laptop shut and let my head loll sideways. Borek Sarin stumbled in, smelling like bourbon and desperation, a leather folder shaking in his hand. "Severin, are you awake?" he whispered. I let out a low, useless moan. "I need your signature. Tonight, the data center investment for the future of the company." He set the page in front of me. It wasn't an investment. It was a $3.25 million transfer draining straight from my personal accounts into whatever hole his gambling debts had dug. I'd later learn it was $3.6 million deep. Sign here," I mumbled, eyes glazed. "Yes, exactly there." His voice cracked with greed dressed as urgency. "It's for the family, Severin. You want to take care of the family, don't you?" "Family," I slurred, "is everything." I took the pen, and I let my hand write the name Severin Varga in a flamboyant, looping style I hadn't used since 1987, a signature I had personally flagged with my own bank 39 years ago as a silent fraud alarm. Anyone who saw it would know instantly. This was not consent. This was a confession, waiting to be triggered. "There," I whispered. "Is that enough?" "It's perfect," he breathed, snatching the page like a starving animal. "Sleep, old man. You've done enough." The second he left, the nausea hit me like a wrecking ball. The tea had been a mercy compared to this. Whatever Malice had been feeding me for weeks. My vitamins, my water, my breakfast. It was cumulative, and it had been building in my bloodstream long before tonight. My vision blurred. A metallic taste flooded my mouth. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to escape the building before I did. I didn't call for help. I didn't scream. I didn't fall apart. I crawled toward my private safe instead, every breath a battle against the dark, creeping in at the edges of my sight. "You think I'm a relic?" I gasped into the empty room. "You think you can dismantle me and sell the parts?" I collapsed against the wall, sliding down until I hit the floor, staring out the window at the Meridian Crown, lit up gold against the night skyline. The tower they'd tried to turn into my death trap, still standing, still mine, still innocent of everything they'd forged in its name. With the last steady motion I had left in my hand, I pulled out the burner phone Oscar had given me and typed 3 words. "The site is hot." I sent it, and as the poison dragged me toward the floorboards, I understood something with total clarity. This war had stopped being about money the moment I read that paternity test. It was about blood now, lies now, and whether a 74-year-old man could survive one more night in his own house long enough to make every single one of them pay for it. I survived that night, barely, and the morning after, I made a decision that would have terrified the man I used to be. I decided to disappear on purpose, not run, not hide. I decided to become a ghost inside my own house, walking around in daylight while everyone who wanted me dead watched me do it. "Severin, darling, why are you standing in the dark?" Malice's voice floated toward me from the doorway of my own library, a room I had built with my own 2 hands 40 years ago. I let my shoulders slump. I let my lower lip tremble, just enough to catch moonlight. I was looking for the ledger, Malice, the one from 1994, but the shelves have moved. Why did you move the shelves? She stepped closer, studying my face for a crack in the performance. I gave her nothing. I stared 3 inches past her left ear into the middle distance, the way a man does when his mind has already left the room. "Oh, Severin," she sighed, stroking my cheek with a hand that felt like a coiled snake. "The shelves haven't moved in a decade. You're just tired. Let's go back to bed." "But the numbers," I whimpered. "They're floating. I can't catch them." "That's the illness, my love," she whispered, close enough that I could smell the gin on her breath. "The world is becoming too heavy for you. Let me carry it. Just sign what Lucien brings tomorrow, and you can rest in the silence forever. In the silence forever." I knew exactly what that sentence meant. It was a death sentence, folded neatly into a lullaby, and I let her lead me to bed like an obedient dying old man, while inside I was building the most dangerous version of myself I had ever been. Here is what I learned in those 2 weeks. Playing the fool is easy. Building proof that you aren't one, that's the real work. At 3:15 every morning, the Hollow Man vanished. I slipped out through the service entrance in a grey hoodie I hadn't worn since before my daughter was born, past security cameras I had personally installed and could bypass blind. I drove a rusted-out sedan I kept in a storage unit across town, straight into the industrial district, where the air tasted like salt and iron. "Velt Risk Management Go Away," the sign on the warehouse door said. I pounded on the steel anyway. "We're closed. Read the sign." A voice barked through the slit. "Oscar, it's me, the man who was too arrogant to listen." The door groaned open. Oscar Velt looked like a cliff face that had learned to walk. 11 years earlier, I had thrown this man out of my own office for telling me my inner circle was rotting from the inside. I chose comfort over his ugly truth. I was about to pay for that choice in blood. He didn't shake my hand. He poured 2 glasses of rye that burned like punishment and sat down at a desk buried in monitors. "You look like hell, Severin," he said, lighting a cigarette. "Is the dementia finally catching up, or did you finally notice your wife is a cobra?" I didn't flinch. "I need you to help me take them apart, piece by piece." Oscar leaned back and smiled, cold as a blade. "You weren't betrayed because they were brilliant liars. You were betrayed because for years you only believed the truths that made you comfortable." That line went through me harder than any physical blow. "I know it," I said. "I traded my peripheral vision for a sense of security. Now I'm paying for it in blood. Will you help me, or do I walk back into the trap alone?" He stared at me for a long, brutal minute, then he spat on the floor and turned to his monitors. "I've been tracking Project Atlas for 6 months on my own time, waiting for you to wake up or die." They're not just stealing your money, Severin. They're sabotaging the safety records on your life's work. They want to turn your legacy into a graveyard. Then let's start the demolition, I said. For 2 weeks, I lived 2 entirely different lives, and one of them would have broken a younger man. By day, I was the pathetic, fumbling patriarch. I forgot how to use the microwave. I called Borek by the name of a gardener who died in the 90s. I watched Malice and Lucien trade smug little glances over morning coffee, certain they were days from the final signature. But every afternoon, I built my black box of sanity. 3 blocks from the house sat a small bakery. Arendt's oven, thick with the smell of yeast and cinnamon, the exact opposite of the sterile air in my own home. Noemi Arendt didn't care about my $76 million net worth. She didn't care about the rumors circling my name. "The usual Severin?" she'd ask, flour dusting her glasses. "A sourdough loaf, toasted, and a black coffee. Noemi, and you owe me $3.42 from yesterday's overpayment." She laughed every time. "Your memory is a curse, old man. Most people would have forgotten the cents." "I don't forget anything," I told her, my voice dropping into its natural iron register for one unguarded second. That bakery was my tactical anchor. Every single day, I debated grain prices, harbor history, holiday dates from 40 years back, with a woman equipped with high-definition security cameras and time-stamped digital receipts. I paid in large bills that demanded complicated change, and I verified every cent of it out loud. While Lucien wrote fake reports claiming I couldn't remember my own zip code, Noemi's cameras were quietly recording a man in total command of his mind. I was documenting a disaster before the world even knew one was coming. One evening, walking home from the bakery, I found Maëlys waiting in the foyer with a vial in her hand. "You've been going out a lot, Severin. The neighbors say you've been wandering. It's dangerous. You might get lost in your own head and never find your way back." She stepped toward me, and a syringe caught the dim light. "Lucien says we need to increase the dosage for your own peace." I looked at that needle and felt the phantom itch of every toxin already sitting in my blood. If I took this dose, the Hollow Man might stop being a performance and start being real. I saw a bird today, Maëlys," I said, my voice trembling exactly on cue. "Blue wings. Like the wallpaper in the nursery. Why did we kill the birds?" For one unguarded second, something like genuine horror crossed her face. Not for me, but because I was dragging up a past she wanted buried. "There were no birds, Severin. Take the medicine." I took the vial from her hand. On my way to the kitchen for water, I swapped it for an identical vial of harmless saline, a gift from Oscar's lab. I turned back, drained the glass, and gave her the widest, most vacant smile I could manufacture. "The silence is coming, Maëlys," I whispered. "Can you hear it?" She smiled back like a woman who'd already won. "I hear it, Severin. It sounds like progress." I walked to my room with my heart hammering a war drum against my ribs. They were arrogant, complacent, convinced they were nailing shut my coffin. They had no idea I was simply waiting for the concrete to set before I pulled every single support out from underneath them. "Just a few more days," I whispered into the dark of my own bedroom, "and then we see who's really lost in the fog." The air in my own home had changed. It no longer smelled like Maëlys's expensive lilies. It smelled like ozone, like a trap being set, tooth by tooth, and me sitting quietly inside it, waiting for the jaw to close. I sat in my study under one dim lamp, slumped in the same chair I'd built my entire empire from, looking every bit the 74-year-old shell they needed me to be. But under that desk, my hand was steady. I wasn't drowning in the fog anymore. I was the fog. A frantic knock cracked the silence. Borek stumbled in, hollow-eyed, a leather folder shaking in his grip like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "Severin, Dad?" His voice trembled. I have the final authorization, the data center transfer. The market's moving fast. We need your signature tonight, or we lose the window. I let my head loll sideways, glazed eyes hiding a contempt so sharp it could have opened his throat. The data center. Is it for the children, Borek? Is it for my Ilyana? Yes, exactly. His eyes flicked to the security camera in the corner, the one Malis used to document my decline. It's for the family. Just sign here, and I'll handle the stress. I picked up my gold fountain pen, the same pen that had signed contracts for the tallest facades in this city. My hand, it shakes, Borek, I whimpered. Just try. A scribble's fine. Sweat and greed rolled off him in waves. I paused just long enough to let him sweat harder. Then I wrote it, the same flamboyant, looping signature from 1987, retired 39 years ago, flagged with my bank as a silent fraud alarm. Anyone who saw that signature would know instantly. This was never consent. This was a confession, cocked and loaded. There, I whispered, is the money safe now? Safe as houses, he breathed, snatching the page like a starving dog. He never even glanced at the signature. He only saw the $3.25 million that would keep his creditors from breaking his kneecaps. He had no idea that the moment that page touched a bank scanner, a fraud alert would fire silently, stamping his name onto a forensic trail he'd never see coming. Go to sleep, Borek, I said, my voice dropping an octave. You look like a man who's already buried. 10 minutes later, Malis entered without knocking, moving like she already owned the air in the room. In her hands, a thick stack of reconstruction documents. The board wants the transition. Severin. Lucien says your tests are getting worse. These papers move management rights and property titles into a family trust. For your protection. I knew exactly what that stack really was. The final page of Project Atlas. Sign it, and she gains the power to liquidate my entire company and hand the corpse to Northbridge for $18.7 million. I don't understand the codes, Malis, I said, pointing at a column of asset IDs. What's Asset 99TR? 44XP? Just technical jargon, darling. Standard filing. She smoothed my hair with a maternal gesture so cold it made my skin crawl. They weren't standard. They were bait papers, built by my own private legal team. Every property code was fabricated. Every asset ID led to a dead server with my name nowhere near it. The moment she tried to file these anywhere official, she wouldn't be seizing my empire. She'd be handing a judge a signed confession of attempted fraud. I trust you, Malis, I lied, my heart beating a slow, steady war rhythm. You're the only foundation I have left. I signed every page with the same senile flourish, watching her eyes ignite with a predator's triumph. You've done the right thing, Severin, she whispered. The world is finally yours, safe. Quiet. I'll call Lucien. We finalize your care plan tonight. The second the door shut behind her, the mask fell off my face like scaffolding coming down. I stood straight. I reached for my burner phone. The bait is taken, Oscar. Tell me we have the rest. Oscar's voice crackled through the line from that wire-cluttered warehouse across the city. We have it all, Severin. It's a massacre. He'd been busy. Using access codes I'd handed him, he'd broken straight into Northbridge Renewal Partners' private servers. Files began landing on my screen, one after another. The audio logs first, recordings from the hospital recovery room and my own kitchen, Maëlys and Lucien discussing the final dose of scopolamine like it was a dinner reservation. Lucien's voice clear as a blade. Once the signature is dry, we increase the sedative. By the time the liver failure starts, the company will already be Northbridge's. Then, the medication journal, a meticulous log Oscar, had built cross-referencing every chemical spike in my blood work with the vitamins. Maëlys forced on me every single morning. And then the file that mattered most, the Meridian Crown files. Maëlys and Lucien had forged technical logs claiming I'd personally authorized substandard reinforcement 23 years ago. But Oscar had found the originals, untouched, unaltered, locked in an offline vault. The real documents proved my tower was a masterpiece of engineering, perfectly safe, and that every warning against it had been manufactured exactly 6 months ago. "They didn't just want your money, Severin," Oscar said, grim satisfaction thick in his voice. "They wanted to kill the legend. They wanted you to die a fraud." "They underestimated the strength of the materials," I said, staring at Lucien's face frozen on my monitor. "He thinks he's a surgeon. He's about to learn what a demolition actually looks like." I scrolled to the final file, the one I'd started long before the surgery, back when I first felt the cracks forming in my own household. 19 days before I ever went under anesthesia, I had quietly triggered a dead man's switch clause buried in the corporate charter. 100% of the voting rights of Varga Civic Systems transferred into an independent shield trust run by third-party auditors and former judges who had never met my wife, my doctor, or my son-in-law. No one in my family, not Marlis, not Ileana, not Borek, could sell a single share, couldn't mortgage a single project, couldn't fire a single janitor. Marlis thought she was holding the keys to my kingdom. She had no idea that 19 days ago I'd already changed every lock and reinforced every door with steel she'd never see coming. "The stage is set for the 42nd anniversary gala at the Meridian Crown," I told Oscar. "They think it's my retirement party. They think they're announcing the new leadership." "And what are they actually going to see?" Oscar asked. I looked out the window at the skyline I'd spent 4 decades keeping upright. My own reflection stared back, no longer a victim. The face of a man who knew exactly where to place the charges, to make an entire structure fold straight down into its own footprint. "They're going to see a structural collapse," I said, "and for the first time in my life, I'm not going to lift one finger to stop it." I closed the laptop. The silence in my penthouse wasn't the silence of a grave anymore. It was the silence right before detonation. The ballroom of the Meridian Crown glittered with everyone who mattered in this city. Politicians, financiers, the press, all gathered to watch what they thought was the quiet sunset of a legend. I sat center stage in a velvet chair, hands trembling with practiced weakness. Marlis stood at my shoulder like a victory flag. Lucien adjusted his tie beside me, wearing concern like a costume. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marlis's voice rang out, warm and rehearsed. "Even the strongest pillars must eventually rest. Tonight, Severin signs the final documents so his legacy continues under those who love him most." Borek stepped forward with the folder. Beside him, Ileana stood pale as chalk, eyes on the floor. "Wait," I said, my voice cracking on cue. "I have a few questions before the ink dries." "Severin, you're tired," Lucien said, smooth as poison. "Let's finish so you can rest." "No." I sat up straight, my spine turned to iron. The fog in my eyes burned away in front of 400 witnesses. "I want to know why I was diagnosed with a progressive brain disease when I haven't seen a neurologist in 10 years. The room went ice cold. Marlis's smile didn't drop, it shattered. I turned to Lucien. "Tell this audience, doctor, why is your signature on 3 neurological evaluations for procedures that never happened?" "This is outrageous," Lucien hissed, purple with panic. "He's delusional. Security." "Don't bother," I said. "Oscar, run it." The screen behind me lit up. Not the tribute video they'd planned, but the recovery room audio, Lucien and Marlis discussing the grey envelope, the sedative, the plan to drown me in my own confusion. "And you, Borek." I turned my gaze on my son-in-law, who looked ready to fold in half. "What were you really planning to do with the $3.25 million you tried to siphon from me? Was the data center actually your gambling debts?" Borek's folder slipped from his numb hands. Finally, I looked at Ileana. My voice softened, but the wound stayed open. "Did you truly believe 32 years of being your father could be erased by one DNA test and a handful of forged emails?" Her knees gave out. She slumped against a pillar, sobbing, as the screen played the fake messages that had poisoned her against me for years. Project Atlas is dead, I told the room. The forged files claiming the Meridian Crown is unsafe are exactly that. Forgeries. My company is safe. My tower is safe. I let the silence sit a moment before the last blow. And to my wife and my oldest friend, the voting rights to Varga Civic Systems moved into an independent trust 19 days ago. You've been fighting over a hollow shell. You never had any power at all. Investigators walked through the ballroom doors as Malice tried to scream over her own recorded laughter about my liver failing. Handcuffs closed around 2 wrists that had poured my medicine every single morning. I walked to Ileana, still shaking against that pillar. "You're not going to jail," I told her, "but you're no longer a director. You let other people define your worth by blood and shares. Go build your own truth." Lucien lost his medical license and is now awaiting trial for fraud and attempted murder. Malice walked out of that ballroom with nothing but a court date and a name nobody in this city will say out loud again. Borek is cooperating with investigators in exchange for a lighter sentence on the fraud charge, his own signature guaranteed. I didn't stay to watch the vultures pick at what was left. I converted $54 million into a fund protecting 1,200 employees and public safety projects across this city. I put $6.8 million into a legal and medical advocacy center for elderly victims of financial abuse. People living exactly what I almost lived, without an Oscar Wilde of their own to call. I left the penthouse, the silk suits, the $76 million of prestige. I moved back to the small, drafty house I lived in when I was young, with nothing but a toolbox and a stubborn kind of hope. Now, every morning I walk 3 blocks to a small bakery. I don't look like a tycoon anymore. I look like a man who finally found his balance. "You're late, Severin," Noemi says when the bell chimes over the door. "The sourdough's already out of the oven." "My apologies," I tell her, and I mean it, smiling in a way that actually reaches my eyes. I was watching the sunrise. First time in 40 years I didn't feel the need to measure the wind speed. For 42 years, I believed the strongest foundations were built from steel, concrete, and precise calculation. I was wrong. The only foundation that can truly hold up a life is honesty. Lose that, and no amount of wealth or blood can stop the whole structure from coming down. And that's it. That's the whole story of how the Severin Varga family tried to bury him with a piece of paper, and how Severin Varga let them believe it worked, right up to the very last moment. If any part of this story sounds familiar, if you've ever had to carry something that no one else knew you were carrying, I want you to know that it's never too late to check what's really written in your own record. Take a moment now to hit like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you would do differently, because I read every single comment. Thank you so much for your time with me and Severin. There's another story, just like this one, waiting for you, and I promise it's just as fascinating. See you in the next video.